Together, the Jedi, Vandukes, and their allies had ensured that the darkness was defeated, and now, it was time to build a future of light. As peace began to take hold in the galaxy, it was time for the Jedi from the future, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Old Ben, and future Yoda, to return to their own timeline. They had played a crucial role in helping to defeat Sidious and prevent the dark future they had once lived through. Standing near the portal in the Jedi Temple, they exchanged final words with their allies from the present. Luke, his green lightsaber clipped at his side, looked at Anakin and smiled. "You still have so much ahead of you. Remember, you have the power to choose your path." Anakin, deeply moved, nodded. "Thank you, Luke. I won't forget this." Old Ben gave his younger self a knowing glance, a shared understanding passing between them. "Take care of him, Obi-Wan. You'll need each other." Obi-Wan, standing beside the present Yoda, returned the smile. "I always have." Future Yoda, leaning on his cane, looked at his past self and simply said, "Strong, the Force remains. Forward, look we must." As the final farewells were exchanged, the future Jedi stepped into the portal. With a final surge of energy, the portal shimmered, and the figures of the future Jedi disappeared, returning to their timeline. Peace had been restored in the present, and the galaxy had been given a second chance. Before Darth Vader stepped through the portal, he paused and turned toward Anakin and Padme, his mask hiding the deep emotion in his voice. For a moment, there was silence between them, a shared understanding of the pain and regret that spanned across time. "I'm sorry," Vader said quietly, his voice, though mechanical, carrying the weight of years of guilt and sorrow. Anakin and Padme exchanged a glance, their emotions conflicted but softened by the vulnerability in Vader's words. As Vader turned to leave, he added, "I will do everything in my power to fix the mess I made in my time." With those final words, Vader walked toward the portal, his black cape flowing behind him, and disappeared into the shimmering energy, returning to the future where he would seek redemption. The room fell silent once more, the gravity of the moment lingering in the air. Anakin stood beside Padme, watching as his future self vanished, both knowing that the choices they made from this moment on would shape the future in ways they couldn't yet fully grasp. But they had been given a chance to change things for the better. With the galaxy finally at peace and the future set on a better path, the Vandukes, Johnny Vanjuk, Street Rat, the Orphan, and Fallout Boy prepared to make their departure. Before leaving, they gathered with the Jedi in the quiet halls of the Jedi Temple. Each of the Jedi, from Obi-Wan and Anakin to Yoda and Ahsoka, received a call sign device from the Vandukes, a gift that would allow them to contact the multiverse's protectors whenever they needed. As the Vandukes turned toward the portal, Street Rat looked back one last time. "Don't be afraid to call us," he said with a small grin, his voice carrying both confidence and reassurance. The Jedi nodded in understanding, knowing that though the Vandukes were returning to their own world, they were only a call away. With that, the three vandukes stepped through the portal, disappearing into the shimmering energy. Moments later, the portal closed behind them, leaving the Jedi to stand in quiet reflection. The vandukes had returned to Lancaster, but the connection between the two worlds remained strong. The bond forged in battle and victory would not be easily forgotten, and the multiverse had never been safer, knowing the vandukes were always ready to answer the call. In the quiet and solemn room of the Jedi Council, the remaining Jedi Masters gathered to reflect on the monumental events that had just unfolded. The air was heavy with the weight of what they had seen and experienced, and now, it was time to discuss the implications of it all. Mace Windu stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back as he looked around at the other Jedi Plo Koon, Kit Fisto, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, and others, each of them weary but alive. We have faced a series of events unlike any in the history of the Jedi, Mace began, his tone measured but firm. Sidious Palpatine has been revealed as the Sith Lord who manipulated both sides of the Clone Wars. We learn this truth through the vandukes and their connection to the multiverse. Without their intervention, the Republic would have fallen. Obi-Wan nodded, reflecting on the tumultuous journey they had taken. The vandukes, they brought knowledge and allies from across the multiverse. It's still hard to believe. We faced versions of ourselves from a future timeline: Luke Skywalker, Old Ben, and even Vader. They confirmed everything we feared. Palpatine would have turned Anakin to the dark side, leading to the fall of the Jedi Order. Anakin, sitting quietly beside Obi-Wan, clenched his fists as the weight of what could have been settled on him. If it hadn't been for them, I might have become him. Vader. The choices I made could have destroyed everything. They showed me the path I could have taken, and I almost did. Ahsoka, standing beside Anakin, added, but we fought back. We stood together with the vandukes, the future versions of ourselves, and we defeated Sidious. But it wasn't just about Palpatine. We saw what the Sith's reach could have been, how far they would have gone. The false storyteller and the impostor were threats we never even knew existed. Plo Koon leaned forward, his voice calm but filled with concern. It is clear now that Sidious had alliances not just in this galaxy, but across realities. His plans went beyond the Republic and the Separatists. He was manipulating forces on a scale we could not comprehend. If not for Dooku's sacrifice, we might not have had the time to stop him. At the mention of Dooku, Yoda's ears drooped slightly, a flicker of sorrow crossing his ancient face. Return to the light, Dooku did. In his final moments, a Jedi he became again. Sacrificed himself, he did, to save the galaxy. A hero he is, despite the darkness he once embraced. Kit Fisto added, we also need to acknowledge the impact on the clones. We uncovered the inhibitor chips designed to control them, and thanks to the vandukes, we removed those chips and stopped their accelerated aging. The clones are no longer tools of war, but individuals who can live their own lives. Obi-Wan nodded in agreement. And the battle droids, once weapons of destruction, are now being repurposed to help rebuild the galaxy. It's a testament to what we've been fighting for, that even those designed for war can be given a second chance. Mace Windu paced slowly, reflecting on the larger picture. But this victory, while monumental, is only the beginning of the work we must do. The galaxy is fractured, and the Republic is in shambles. Palpatine's influence stretched far and deep, and there will be those who still support his vision of control. Yoda, ever the wise voice of the Council, spoke softly but with determination. Much to rebuild, we have. Peace, fragile it is. But hope, strong it remains. A second chance, we have been given. Seize it, we must. Anakin, his expression resolute, added, the future is still uncertain, but we've been given a glimpse of what it can become if we stay true to the light. We can prevent the dark future that nearly came to pass. Ahsoka nodded beside him. The vandukes helped us see that. Their ability to move between realities, to protect the multiverse, gave us a perspective we could never have had on our own. We're stronger now because we know what's at stake. Plo Koon folded his hands in front of him, his tone reflective. We have been tested in ways we never imagined, but we prevailed. With the vandukes' help, we defeated not just Sidious, but the darkness that threatened to consume everything. Now, we must focus on rebuilding and ensuring that the balance we fought so hard to restore is maintained. The room fell into a brief silence, each Jedi lost in thought. They had seen the galaxy's potential for both darkness and light, and now it was their duty to protect it. The future, though uncertain, was brighter than it had been in a long time. But they all knew that vigilance would be needed to prevent the mistakes of the past from returning. Mace Windu's voice broke the silence, his tone resolute. We must rebuild the Jedi Order, re-establish our place in the galaxy as guardians of peace and justice. The galaxy will need guidance, and we will be ready to provide it. Yoda, standing with his small cane, gave a nod of agreement. The Force, it is with us. Together, stronger we are. A brighter future, we will forge. With that, the discussion came to a close. The Jedi, having reflected on the battles they had fought and the lessons they had learned, knew that their journey was far from over. But they also knew that they were now equipped with the knowledge, strength, and allies to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so, united and determined, the Jedi Order prepared to rebuild, to heal the wounds of the past, and to ensure that peace, justice, and balance would reign across the galaxy. The portal hummed with energy as it opened once more, weeks after the galaxy had begun to rebuild itself. Out of the swirling light stepped a man, dressed in a casual punk rock aesthetic, torn jeans, a band shirt, and a jacket that had seen better days. His .44 Magnum rested easily on his hip, but it was his face that drew attention. Despite his youthful appearance, the weight of countless experiences across the multiverse was etched into his features. This was not just any vanduke. He carried an aura of authority, of stories long told and battles hard fought. He was one of the first vandukes to walk the multiverse. The original storyteller had arrived. The Jedi had called him for help. And with his arrival, a new chapter was about to begin. The Jedi gathered around the original storyteller, their expressions serious as they prepared to explain the situation in great detail. Master Yoda, his small form radiating wisdom, began by speaking of Coruscant's history, and what was now known as Level 1, the lowest and most forgotten layer of the planet-wide city. Coruscant, a city built upon itself, layer by layer, Yoda began, his voice soft but carrying weight. The highest levels, grand they are, filled with life, power, and the flow of politics. But below, far below, darkness lingers. Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped forward to explain further. Coruscant's history stretches back tens of thousands of years. The upper levels are what most people see: the shining towers, the Senate, the bustling districts. But few know what lies beneath. The city has been built up over millennia, with layer upon layer of infrastructure, industry, and abandoned architecture. The further down you go, the older and more decayed it becomes. Anakin Skywalker, looking troubled, added, "Level 1 is the lowest of all levels. It's beneath even the most dangerous slums. No one goes there because they can't. It's not just inhospitable, it's deadly." Kit Fisto, ever the optimist, gave a grave nod. The air is unbreathable. The oxygen is long gone, consumed by the age of the city. Level 1 is not just dangerous because it's old, there's no air to breathe. Even droids struggle to function in its environment, and no life has been able to survive there for centuries. It's a place completely forgotten by time. Obi-Wan continued, "Even worse, it's a place devoid of life in every sense. Disease and bacteria, which can thrive in the worst environments, cannot survive in Level 1. It's a place utterly devoid of the basic elements that support life, an ancient tomb at the heart of the planet." The original storyteller listened intently, his eyes narrowing as he took in the gravity of what they were explaining. He had been to some of the darkest and most dangerous places in the multiverse, but this sounded different. It sounded wrong. Mace Windu, always pragmatic, stepped in. "We felt a disturbance in the force coming from that level. It's faint, but unmistakable. Something dark stirs there. The simic readers in the temple devices we use to monitor psychic energy have picked up activity, something we haven't seen for millennia. It's as if an ancient power has awakened. But none of us can reach it." Plo Koon nodded. "We've sensed it too. The Jedi can't survive in that environment. The lack of oxygen, the complete sterilization of life, it makes it impossible for us to go down there. Even with the Force, we are bound by the same physical limitations. We would suffocate within moments. Which is why we need you, Ahsoka Tano said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. You Vandukes, unlike the Jedi, you don't need oxygen to survive. You can go to places we can't. Whatever is happening down there, it's ancient, and it's dangerous. We believe you might be the only one who can investigate it and survive. The original storyteller looked at them, his thoughts racing. Level 1 wasn't just a forgotten relic, it was something more. A place so far removed from life that even bacteria couldn't exist. It was an alien environment, completely inhospitable, but he knew that if the Jedi had called him in, it was because whatever was happening down there was a threat to more than just Coruscant. Master Yoda spoke once more, his voice grave. Deprived of oxygen, level 1 is. In the deepest parts, something dark, ancient, awakens. Dangerous, it is, for Jedi or any living being. But you, Vanduke, special, your abilities are. Survive you can, where others cannot. Plo Koon, who had fought in many battles alongside the Vandukes, added, you've been through many dangerous realities. You've seen things we can't even imagine. That's why we need you to go down there. We're counting on you to figure out what's happening. The original storyteller gave a slow nod, understanding the weight of what they were asking. This wasn't just a matter of exploring a forgotten part of Coruscant, it was about confronting something ancient, something dark that had been lurking in the shadows for millennia. It was a task only someone like him, a Vanduke, could handle. After a moment of silence, he looked at the Jedi and said, all right. I'll go. But whatever's down there, we need to be ready. If the Force is sensing it, then it's more than just an ancient relic. It's something dangerous. And I'll find out what it is. The Jedi, their expressions grim but relieved, nodded. They knew that with the original storyteller on their side, they had a chance to uncover the secrets of level 1 and face whatever dark power awaited them there. The original storyteller stood in the quiet chamber, going over the situation once more in his mind. If level 1 was truly as inaccessible as the Jedi had said, with no natural openings, no breathable air, and no living presence, then it meant that reaching it would require something unconventional, something only he could manage. He turned to the Jedi, his eyes scanning their faces, filled with quiet resolve. If it's unreachable, then there's no way down naturally, Vanduke mused aloud. Which means I'll have to make my own way in. He activated his call sign, the familiar device humming to life in his hand, and began preparing for what lay ahead. If I don't come back in 24 hours, contact the other Vandukes. You know what to do. The Jedi, their expressions a mix of concern and confidence in Vanduke's abilities, nodded in agreement. They had witnessed firsthand what Vandukes were capable of and knew that if anyone could navigate the unknown dangers of level 1, it would be him. With that, The original storyteller turned away, his mind already focused on the mission. He made his way to the nearest access point that led toward the lower levels, bypassing the bustling city above, and descending deeper into Coruscant's forgotten underbelly. His heart raced as he moved further from the light of the upper levels, feeling the air grow colder and thinner as he approached the depths of the planet-wide city. Eventually, the air itself grew too thin to breathe, confirming the warnings of the Jedi. Vandukes steeled himself, activating his multiversal powers to sustain his body without oxygen. His thoughts were sharp as he made his way deeper, crossing into the realm of Level 1, silent, dark, and utterly void of life. Now, it was time to find out what dark secret had awakened in this ancient, forgotten place. As the original storyteller Vandukes descended into the depths of Coruscant, the temperature dropped sharply, and the air became thick with an eerie, suffocating stillness. The darkness around him seemed unnatural more than just the absence of light. It felt as though the very shadows had weight, pressing down on him with a quiet menace. He activated his ethereal vision, allowing him to see through the unnatural darkness. The labyrinthine structure of Coruscant's forgotten levels sprawled out before him, a network of abandoned tunnels, collapsed infrastructure, and forgotten machines that had been long buried beneath the surface. Vandukes moved silently, his .44 Magnum ready at his side, the weapon humming with multiversal energy, prepared for anything that might lurk in the forgotten depths. The silence was unsettling, even for someone as experienced as him. There was no sound of life, no hum of machines, no distant voices or echoes, just a vast, empty void. And yet, despite the emptiness, Vandukes could feel the weight of something in the air, something dark that lingered just out of reach. It was as though the very atmosphere was steeped in malevolence, a slow, creeping sense of dread that tightened around his chest. As he pushed forward, his call sign began to pick up faint energy readings. Something was down here, something powerful. He moved deeper into the forgotten tunnels, following the trail of dark energy that seemed to pull him further into the labyrinth. Then, without warning, the ground beneath him trembled. Vandukes paused, his instincts flaring. The tremor was subtle, but it reverberated through the entire structure, like the slow awakening of a long-dormant beast. He scanned the area, his enhanced vision allowing him to pick out the details of his surroundings. The walls were old, ancient even, covered in rust and grime from millennia of neglect. But there were symbols here, faint and worn with time, etched into the metal. They weren't standard markings from Coruscant's history, they were something older, something far more ancient. Vandukes knelt, examining the runes. They pulsed with dark energy, faint but unmistakable. He couldn't place the language, but the power behind them was clear. They were part of whatever force had been hidden away for so long. His call sign flickered, giving him a reading that confirmed his suspicions. These runes were tied to the dark presence the Jedi had sensed. As he continued down the tunnel, the air grew heavier. He no longer felt the cold or the lack of oxygen, but the weight of the dark energy became almost palpable, pressing in on him like a physical force. The walls around him began to shift, subtly at first, but then with greater intensity. Reality itself seemed to warp the further he went. And then, he found it. The tunnel opened up into a vast, dark chamber. The walls were lined with the same ancient runes, glowing faintly in the dim light. At the center of the room was a massive, black structure, a monolith of sorts, covered in intricate designs, pulsating with a slow, rhythmic energy. The dark presence was overwhelming here. Vanjik could feel it pulsing through the air, seeping into the very ground beneath him. Whatever this was, it was old, far older than the structures of Coruscant. It felt like something that predated the Republic, something ancient and forgotten. Suddenly, a low, guttural sound echoed through the chamber. Vanjik froze, his magnum raised. He scanned the room, his ethereal vision piercing the darkness, but there was no movement. The sound, however, persisted, growing louder, more insistent. It was like the deep rumble of something awakening, something vast and malevolent stirring from a long slumber. He approached the monolith, his eyes narrowing as he took in the strange symbols carved into its surface. They weren't just inscriptions, they were alive, pulsing with the dark energy that had corrupted the chamber. He reached out, his fingers grazing the cold, black stone, and felt a sudden jolt of energy surge through him. In that moment, the darkness around him seemed to shift. The chamber quivered, and the runes on the walls flared with a violent red light. Vanjik stepped back, his heart racing. Something was coming. He could feel the presence growing stronger, its power swelling in the air. And then, from the shadows, a figure began to emerge. It was tall, impossibly so, its body wrapped in shadow and darkness, like a figure from an ancient nightmare. Its face was obscured, but its eyes burning with a crimson fire locked onto Vanjik with a hunger that sent a chill down his spine. The figure was ancient, far older than anything he had encountered before, its presence a black hole of malevolent energy. It spoke, though its voice was not a voice at all, it was the sound of the void, of empty spaces between stars. You are not supposed to be here. Vanjik's grip on his magnum tightened. Who are you? He demanded, his voice steady, though the tension in the air was unbearable. The figure stepped forward, the darkness around it swirling like a living entity. I am what has always been. I am the one who waits beneath the surface, the one who sees what others cannot. And you, traveler, have made a grave mistake. Vanjik didn't flinch. He had faced beings like this before, forces of darkness from other realities. But this felt different, more ancient, more deeply rooted in the very fabric of the universe. Whatever this being was, it had been waiting here for a long, long time. I don't make mistakes, Vanjik replied, his voice calm but filled with determination. The figure's crimson eyes flared brighter. You will soon learn otherwise. The chamber shuddered again, and the darkness seemed to press in tighter. Vanjik knew then that whatever this was, it was only the beginning. The true nature of level 1 was far darker than anyone had realized, and now he was in the heart of it. And he would have to survive whatever came next. Vanjik's eyes narrowed as the shadowy figure advanced, moving with the speed and precision of a seasoned warrior. The darkness swirled around him, thick and impenetrable, making it nearly impossible to gauge his opponent's full form. Every strike Vanjik attempted was met with brutal, overwhelming force. He was quick, but this being moved with an unnatural agility, its dark power seeping into every motion, every strike. Vanjik leaped back, raising his magnum and firing, but the figure dodged effortlessly, the shadows consuming the bullets before they could make contact. The fight was one-sided, and Vanjik knew it. He was powerful, but this enemy was something else entirely. It was like fighting the embodiment of the dark side itself, a primal force that had existed for eons. But what the shadowed figure didn't know was that Vanjik held the power to rewrite the very fabric of reality. As the dark figure lunged again, Vanjik's mind raced. He could feel the oppressive weight of the shadows closing in, but he had one advantage that no one could take from him: control over the environment itself. It was time to shift the battle in his favor. He activated his call sign, tapping into the multiversal power that coursed through him, and with a single thought, everything changed. The darkness that had filled the room was instantly pierced by a blinding light. Vanjik flooded the space with radiant energy, the oppressive shadows dissipating like smoke in the wind. The old, decaying machinery and rusted walls around him began to hum with life, gears turning, metal groaning as the long-dead mechanisms sparked to life once more. Oxygen filled the room, the air no longer stale and suffocating. Nature itself seemed to respond, vines and greenery creeping up the walls as if life had been restored to a long-forgotten world. The lights above flickered on, casting the entire chamber in bright, sterile light. The transformation was immediate and total. The oppressive darkness that had once given the figure its strength was gone, replaced by life and light. Now, for the first time, Vanjik could see his opponent in full. The figure that had once been hidden in the shadows now stood exposed in the brilliant light of the restored chamber. His cloak was tattered, and his skin pale, his features gaunt and lined with age, but his eyes burned with a deep, crimson fire. He held a lightsaber, its blade red and humming with the energy of the dark side, but the robes he wore told a deeper story, one from a time long past. This was no ordinary Sith. The dark energy radiating from him, combined with the ancient style of his robes, revealed the truth. Vanjik was facing one of the original Dark Jedi, one who had turned to the dark side and become a Sith many thousands of years ago, before even the rise of the Sith Empire. This was one of the founding members of the Ancient Order, a being who had helped shape the dark side itself into what it had become. The Dark Jedi's red eyes blazed with fury as he realized what Vanjik had done. "You dare rewrite reality in my domain." His voice was deep, filled with both ancient wisdom and hatred. You will regret this, traveler. But Vanduk, now standing in control of the environment, smirked. You don't know the multiverse like I do. This is my domain now. With the shadows gone and the environment alive with energy, Vanduk knew the tide had turned. The battle was no longer one-sided. He could see his enemy clearly now, and with the restored light, the ancient Sith no longer had the advantage of the darkness. The real fight was about to begin. The light of the newly revived chamber bathed the two combatants in sharp contrast. Vanduk, now fully in control of his environment, squared off against the ancient Dark Jedi, a Sith Lord of untold power and age. The chamber buzzed with the revived hum of machinery, the sound mixing with the crackle of the red blade lightsaber in the Sith's hand. But despite Vanduk's newfound advantage, this Dark Jedi was no ordinary foe. His experience, honed over millennia, made every strike swift, precise, and deadly. The Force itself seemed to ripple with his every movement, like a predator coiled to strike. The ancient Sith lunged forward, his lightsaber flashing in a deadly arc. Vanduk dodged by a hair's breadth, feeling the searing heat of the red blade pass close to his skin. The Sith pressed the attack relentlessly, his movements fueled by anger at having been exposed and outwitted. Vanduk rolled to the side, firing his magnum in quick succession, but the Sith deflected the shots with a series of tight, controlled movements. You are an anomaly, the Sith hissed, his voice a dark growl as he drove Vanduk back, a disruption in the natural order. The dark side will consume you. Vanduk barely had time to respond before the Sith lashed out again, the lightsaber slashing dangerously close to his chest. Vanduk ducked, but the ancient warrior's speed was overwhelming. The Sith leaped into the air, aiming a crushing overhead strike. Vanduk raised his magnum and fired, the enhanced bullets exploding against the Sith's lightsaber, but the impact sent Vanduk skidding backward. Gasping for breath, Vanduk could feel the heat of the battle rise around him. The Sith was skilled. His age and experience made him a force unlike any Vanduk had faced before. The chamber seemed to warp with the weight of the Sith's dark power, the pressure of the Force making the air thick and heavy despite Vanduk's manipulation of the environment. The Sith closed the distance, his crimson blade flashing in a complex series of strikes aimed at overwhelming Vanduk's defenses. Vanduk ducked, rolled, and dodged, using every ounce of his enhanced speed and agility to avoid the lethal strikes. But the Sith was relentless. With each near miss, the blade cinched Vanduk's clothes, cutting close to his skin as the deadly duel intensified. The Sith aimed for Vanduk's head with a vicious horizontal slash, but Vanduk parried the blow with his magnum, using the gun like a makeshift sword to block the strike. The two stood locked in place, the force of their weapons pressing against one another. Sweat beaded on Vanduk's forehead as he fought to hold his ground, the red glow of the lightsaber illuminating his determined face. Your power is fleeting, traveler, the Sith spat, pushing harder. You cannot defeat me. Vanduk gritted his teeth, refusing to give in. He knew he needed to turn the tide fast. With a sudden burst of strength, Vanduk shifted his weight, twisting his body to the side and letting the Sith's momentum carry him forward. The Sith stumbled for a brief second, off balance. That was Vanduk's moment. He kicked the Sith in the chest, sending him backward a few feet, and quickly holstered his magnum. His eyes flicked to the ancient weapon in the Sith's hand. The lightsaber, the weapon of his enemy, would be his only chance. The Sith recovered quickly, snarling in rage as he lunged at Vanduk again, but this time Vanduk was ready. Using his enhanced speed, he sidestepped the Sith's next strike, reaching out with both hands. In one swift motion, Vanduk grabbed the hilt of the lightsaber, twisting it out of the Sith's grasp. For the first time, surprise flickered in the Sith's ancient eyes as his weapon was torn from his hand. Before the Sith could react, Vanduk spun the lightsaber in his grip, igniting its crimson blade. The weight of the weapon felt foreign but powerful in his hands, humming with dark energy. Without hesitation, he swung the blade at the Sith, the red light slashing through the air with deadly intent. The Sith, unarmed and momentarily stunned by the loss of his weapon, tried to backpedal, his hands raised to summon the dark side of the Force. But Vanduk gave him no chance. In a single, fluid motion, he stepped forward, bringing the lightsaber down in a powerful arc. The crimson blade met the Sith's torso, cutting through him with a clean strike. The ancient warrior's face contorted in shock and pain as the blade seared through his form. He staggered back, his body crackling with the energy of the lightsaber wound, his dark presence weakening as the Force itself seemed to recoil from him. "You cannot kill what is eternal," the Sith gasped, his voice fading as his body began to collapse. The shadows around him flickered and dissolved, the dark power that had sustained him for so many centuries finally fading into oblivion. Vanduk, breathing heavily, stood over the fallen Sith, the crimson blade of the lightsaber still humming in his grip. The chamber, once filled with oppressive darkness, was now lit by the brilliance of the revived machinery and the light Vanduk had summoned. The ancient runes on the walls flickered one last time before dimming, their power extinguished along with the Sith. The Dark Jedi, one of the original betrayers who had turned to the dark side thousands of years ago, lay defeated at Vanduk's feet. His ancient reign of terror had finally come to an end, his body dissolving into the dust of forgotten time. Vanduk deactivated the lightsaber, the hum fading into silence. The battle was over. He had won. Remember this? The original storyteller Vanduk informs the Jedi. Yes. No. Vanduk returned to the Jedi Temple, the weight of the battle still fresh in his mind. As he gathered with the Jedi Council to recount what had transpired, his voice was steady but firm. "I fought an ancient dark Jedi, one of the originals who turned to the Sith thousands of years ago. He had been hiding in the depths of Level 1, sustained by the dark side for millennia." Vanduk paused, his gaze moving across the Jedi, letting the significance of the encounter sink in. "I managed to defeat him," he continued. "But more importantly, I've changed the environment down there. The light, oxygen, and life I introduced should start to spread throughout the lower levels. Levels 1 through 4 have been deprived for so long, but now, over the next few years, they should become habitable again." The Jedi exchanged glances, processing the implications of what Vanjik had done. Yoda, his wise eyes gleaming, nodded. "A gift, this is. Life returns to where there was none. A dark place, it was. But now, it changes." Vanjik nodded. "There will still be work to do, but in time, those levels can be rebuilt and used again. The darkness that had lingered there is gone." Obi-Wan, standing nearby, looked at Vanjik with respect. "What you've done will not only protect Coruscant but give it a chance to grow again. The lower levels can finally be restored." Vanjik, feeling the weight of the task lifted from his shoulders, gave a small smile. "Just make sure you're ready for what comes next. This galaxy has a lot of potential, but it's not without its challenges." With those final words, the Jedi knew that Vanjik had not only defeated an ancient threat but had also set in motion a new era of growth for Coruscant, one that would take time but would bring life back to the long-forgotten lower levels. And so, with the ancient Sith defeated and the lower levels of Coruscant slowly returning to life, the galaxy entered a new era of hope and renewal. The Vanjikis, ever watchful, returned to the multiverse, knowing that their work was far from over. The Jedi, with newfound strength and unity, prepared to rebuild and face whatever challenges lay ahead. But for now, at least, peace had returned, and a brighter future beckoned on the horizon. The end.